It's Super Bowl Sunday, and I thought I'd make a little video as I drive to the Magic Shop to play Magic. Yes, the new set came out. I'm a nerd. I play games every so often, especially with my brother. But I kind of want to talk about injury and people who have pain and people who get hurt. Kind of seems so fitting because Brandon Lilly, one of my favorite powerlifters, recently got injured in a powerlifting meet. It was a pretty bad spill. It looks like his MCL, or his medial collateral, basically his medial collateral ligament basically gave out. You can see it buckle in. And it kind of gave me some thoughts and just thinking about people who move well and people who don't. And one of the things that come to mind is Dan Green. So I'll talk about Dan Green because, you know, one thing that's interesting about Dan Green, actually meeting him in person and then also trying to see more of his videos, you know, because I've always kind of watched him, but there's some things I really noticed about him that kind of makes him injury proof. And I guess what I mean by injury proof is I really mean a low likelihood for a knee injury. Because for a lot of, one of the biggest catastrophic sports injuries is having some sort of knee injury. You know, people have ankle injuries and they have shoulder stuff. And I mean, don't get me wrong, those are really, and they even have back injuries too, they're big problems. But the knee is a really big joint, it's a big engine, and it's very susceptible that if it does get hurt, it can really destroy somebody's career and really mess people up. And kind of one of the interesting things about Dan Green that comes to mind, and kind of what I notice about really good lifters, is not just that they move well, they have a big ass. They have a big butt. Mark Bell was talking about how I forgot what the guy's name was, Strongman. He said, talking about deep cheeks, having a big butt. Anyways, having big glutes is actually one of the biggest things that really help for protecting the knee. It actually makes it so you're anatomically more efficient, or not efficient, you have anatomically better leverage to control the knee in a more advantageous position, so that way you don't get injured. You don't mess the knee up. Typically, if your feet are closer together, you can get more hurt, or there's a higher likelihood with more pain or more injury. And here's one of the reasons why there's a likelihood for pain or injury is because you're under a less stable surface, or you have a less base of support. And when you have a less base of support, your knees can easily cave in more, or they're susceptible to more torque at the knee joint because there's more quadricep involvement. One of the things that why people do front squats or they do close hand squats is to put emphasis on the quads, work on your quads more. And you think about leg press and knee and leg extension. Think about the position of the feet and the knees. Typically, they're fairly close together, which allows for more quadricep activation. And then you think about movements like the sumo deadlift, or kind of a powerlifting style equipped squat. Those people who squat and deadlift like that are more susceptible to hip injuries, and they tend to be much less catastrophic. They still can be, powerlifting is a dangerous sport, or can be. But understand that the hip is the really biggest engine of the body, and when the knee is not able to stay stable enough for the feet being close together, the knees are not able to move. If you don't have the proper flexibility, that's kind of where I'm going at. If you don't have the proper flexibility or good motor control of the hips, when your feet are closer, your knees are more likely to get hurt. And another good example of that would be like running. If your feet are fairly close together when you run, you're not running like a duck, hopefully. That would actually constitute. Think about this, if you run like a duck, you're going to probably have hip problems. If you sumo deadlift too often, too much, without paying attention to the muscle imbalances and other underlying problems, you'll probably have some hip problems. And if you do too much front squatting, lots of jumping and vertical jumping, you will most likely have some knee problems. Now again, this is all a little oversimplified, and there's a lot more to this, but I'm just thinking about the spectrum as a whole and kind of my experience as a coach, seeing other people train, what people run into. Because a lot of this stuff can be overcome with strength. If you're strong enough, you're going to be less likely to get hurt. But one of the things that I bring up Dan Green and why he's sort of injury proof is you look at his anatomy, because I met him in person. He's not that tall. He's about my height. I think in a picture I look taller than him, but I think that's only because he was standing wider. But he has big glutes, he has big thighs, and those hips allow his knee to stay protected. And also his style of squatting and his style of deadlifting, he always does everything wide. And staying wide allows for a much more stable surface. And again, a lot of what I'm talking about is very anecdotal, observational opinion, and you can take it for what it is. You don't have to believe me, but just think about this for a second. I mean, I don't know if you're a coach or a trainer and you've taken NASM, or if you've done any wide stance squats or anything like that. You'll know that your body, when your feet are wider, your hips get more involved. When your feet are narrower, your quads get more involved. That's overgeneralization, but that's typically what happens. Depending on what you're weak at, what muscles are weak, you're going to have some issues. But understand that one of the reasons why Dan Greens appears to me as being someone who's very injury proof is because his hips are big, his big glutes. But I guess what you can say is that if he ever decides to squat narrow with very, very heavy weight, he could have problems, you know? And that's sort of kind of like the idea you want to take into consideration. And a lot of this has to do with physics too. Think about how the knee is attached to, to the femur bone, how it attaches to the hip. There's I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, eventually I will get better at explaining this stuff, and I swear I will, but hopefully you kind of got an idea of kind of where I'm coming from, what I'm talking about. And man, I just find this stuff so interesting. So anyways, that's all I got, and I'm about to play some Magic the Gathering.